Hey everyone, Chris Green here. If you're new to Studio One and mixing, this video is just for you. If you've got an acoustic or singer-songwriter kind of song, this video is also for you. As you can see, there's not many tracks I have on this song, Georgia's Still on My Mind. And I'm not going to break down like every plugin and every single setting. That would get really just tiresome for everybody, but I do want to break down a few things that happened with the lead vocal, some of the acoustic guitar and mixing decisions that I had along the way. So if you are new to mixing, I'll try to keep things as beginner friendly as possible. I don't want to talk over your head. I don't want to confuse you. I want you to have success as you're mixing, especially if you're an independent artist and you're doing this stuff all on your own. I believe that you can get very competitive results along the way and have fun at the same time. So like I said, my name is Chris Green. We're gonna get started with the song Georgia's Still on My Mind. It's very sparse, I would say, as far as the amount of tracks that are available to us in this song. And when you don't have drums and you don't have heavy electric guitars, there's not a lot of room to hide. So what I'm gonna do is start at the beginning of the song and just wanna play a little bit of the intro, maybe a verse, and then we'll jump around and talk about the mixing in a little bit. So here's the song, take a listen to the final mix, and then we'll talk about it.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest, and I confess I miss those simpler times when Mama's sweet voice woke me with a sunny song and crickets sang me lullabies. Well, my bags have long been packed and rolled away, but that Chattahoochee still runs through my veins.
That is the song Georgia's Still in My Mind. My wife wrote this song. She's the one that's singing in it. I'll play acoustic guitar on pretty much all of her tracks, electric guitar and bass. I kind of do all the instruments. She does the singing. What are we trying to do with mixing? Mixing, if you don't know, is basically taking these raw tracks that we've recorded and you're trying to polish them. You're trying to make them so that they are radio friendly, as people used to say, trying to make it sound like a CD. And what that basically means is we're manipulating the audio so that we're able to get more volume, also better tones out of the things that we've recorded. Imagine if you record a guitar track and that guitar sounds really dark. Well, in the mixing process, a lot of times you're able to add brightness to things that sound dark. You can also dull things that sound too harsh. Think about it like you're playing with Play-Doh. You take Play-Doh, you can manipulate it and build all these shapes. Of course, it helps to have the right colors. It helps to have the right pieces. But when we're mixing, we want the final song that you listen to, you want it to be one cohesive unit. Even in a song like this that has not that many tracks at all, you still want each element to stand out in its place. If you took the time to record it, you probably want it to stand out and contribute to the overall sound. On Studio One, this is our main area of navigation. You've probably seen this before. All of these tracks over here, these are called tracks, these gray rectangles on the left side. Each time I click, you can notice over here on the info view, you can notice all these different plugins that are being loaded specific to those tracks. So like I said, we have a lead vocal, we have 2 harmonies, we have 2 acoustic guitars, 4 electric guitars, and a bass guitar. On the bottom right of Studio One, there's a mix button, and the tab you can hit for mix will bring up something that's very similar to a console. This is something you'd be familiar with if you've been to live events. Maybe at church, you have a sound guy. He's used to seeing these faders, okay? Faders are going to determine a lot of the volume for us. So after we've done plug-in processing up here, these go down, they get sent to buses. We'll talk about buses in just a little bit, and then we hit the faders. Just to go over an overview of everything, we're all headed towards this mix bus, okay? All the audio, all these tracks over here, eventually make their way to what's called a mix bus. The mix bus is where everything collapses, and they're all going to be processed through these different plugins. The first plugin I've got on the entire mix bus is by FabFilter. It's called Pro C2. It's a compressor plugin, but I'm not using it as a standard compressor. I've loaded this preset called Low Mid Control. If you go to Mastering, it's down right here. Low Mid Control. What it's basically doing is filtering only just the low mids, and it's giving them a little bit of a pat on the head. Okay, it's making sure that the low mids stay fine. The rest of the frequencies, the high range, is going to be left alone. After that, I've got a boost. This is a Pultec EQ plugin from UAD. This one just comes standard with most of their interfaces. The thing that this does basically is at the low frequencies at 60 hertz, I'm doing this boost and cut function. So I'm boosting 2, and I've got attenuation set to 2 as well. And I'm going for a more broad shape of the bandwidth rather than sharp. And then the high frequencies I've got set to 10 kilohertz. I'm doing the same thing. I'm boosting and cutting. Again, with a Pultec EQ, what this is going to do is just kind of tuck in the highs and mids of the frequency. And as you'll see in just a second, when I click this EQ plugin from FabFilter, I want you to see now on the screen, this is going to be a frequency readout of everything that you're hearing. So everything that's headed to the mix bus, everything that's going through this compressor plugin and this EQ plugin is going to be visible to you on a frequency spectrum called FabFilter Pro Q3. This is normally an EQ. I'm not using it as an EQ. I just want to visually see what's happening. So if I go to the chorus of this song right here and hit the space bar, you'll see the waveforms, or you'll see the frequencies pop up down here.
Bags have long been packed and rolled away, and that Chattahoochee still runs through my veins.
So that wave that you saw being pumped right here, that was actually a readout of the lows, mids, and the high frequencies that you're listening to in the song. It's good to have some sort of EQ plugin that has a readout, some sort of frequency diagram that you can check every now and then on your mix bus. Your mix bus, again, is where everything is being filtered through at the very end. Following that, I've got another FabFilter compressor plugin, and it's doing this preset called Gentle Wide Mastering. So if you go into Mastering here and you go to Gentle Wide Mastering, you'll get your start right there. I did manipulate a little bit of the ratio and the threshold to make sure that it was doing a little bit of stuff. You can kind of see what this plugin is doing in just a second.
And rolled away, and that Chattahoochee still runs through my veins.
On your mix bus, it should be the most subtle sort of things happening. So every time you saw the red line moving just a little bit, this compressor plugin is just gently, like it says, gentle wide mastering is happening there. And then the last plugin I have for the entire mix is called Ozone. The thing I'm using Ozone for is the overall volume of the track. I've got set to classic, and then I've got the ceiling set to negative 1.3 decibels. Like I said, the song is Georgia Still in My Mind, as you can tell. It's very singer-songwriter, acoustic friendly. On the acoustic guitar track, just so you know, over on Studio One, if you hit this lowercase I, it'll bring up this info view, inspector, as they call it. And over on the inspector window, you can load plugins with this plus button right here. A lot of the plugins I'm using come from the Presonus folder or FabFilter, as you'll see. You can pan these things left and right. So over here, it normally says C for center. If you click that and then type L35, now I'm sending this acoustic guitar to the left 35. I've got it set to 0. I want to try and keep my faders at 0 as much as possible until I get to automating. What I do in the meantime is I will take something like this acoustic guitar track. I'll load a mix tool. And after the mix tool, I have this VU meter from Presonus. Both of these are Presonus plugins. You've seen this probably in some of my other videos. First thing I want to do is clip gain the tracks. How do I clip gain? I've got this VU meter set to negative 18. And with the clip gain, basically this is a mix tool plugin. I'm using the gain knob here to boost the entire track by just 1.2 decibels. But the goal is I want the needle to be hovering around 0 as much as possible. When it hovers around 0, that means I'm at negative 18. That's a healthy volume. So I'm going to solo this acoustic guitar track. Let's take a listen. Okay, So as you can see, it's hovering around 0 as much as possible. There's no compression or anything added to it at the moment. So I'm happy with it hitting 0. I want to definitely see the needle moving. If it's not moving, you probably need to add more gain to it as well. I do the same thing on all of my tracks. That's just part of my clip gain process. And I say clip gain because you can either do this with the mix tool plugin by adding gain to everything, or if you need to grab these specific regions, you can grab this white square, click and drag up, and that'll increase the gain, or you can click and drag down and that will decrease the gain. So that's actually clip gain. This is just gain staging my tracks. I want to make sure that my tracks have a healthy amount of volume. I want to encourage you to aim for -18. Plugins that we use, evidently, they also like to see -18 as well. So have that loaded if you can. Next on this acoustic guitar track, I have an EQ plugin. Now you may not have FabFilter Pro Q3. That's kind of a tongue twister, but you can use the built-in plugin from Presonus as well. If you go to Presonus, scroll down to what's called Pro EQ. It looks very similar as well. You can do cuts like this and such all along the way. I want to encourage you to, you don't have to copy my acoustic guitar settings, but commonly with acoustic guitars, what we're doing is we're rolling off a lot of low end. This one's at 117 Hertz. This is the lead guitar part. It's not very boomy at all. I don't need this content information down here. And then this EQ lets me do what's called dynamic EQ processing. So the dynamic EQ processing is happening at 162 Hertz. Anytime there's some low content and information, it's going based off of how loud that information is. It's not just a static EQ. Up here, I have an attempt to take away some highs as well. Let's take a listen to that real quick. I'm going to turn the plugin off. So this is with no EQ. And here it is with the EQ. Especially you can hear it reining in some of those low mids as well. That's a pretty common EQ move. I'll do the same thing pretty much with all of my acoustic guitar tracks. The electric guitars, I didn't have a lot of stuff happening to them except for this effects rack plugin. It's one of my favorite plugins because when I got this plugin, it came with everything you see on the right. So Sound Toys, if you can get this effects rack, I encourage you to check it out. This is almost like Vibe Central because you got things like Decapitator and Devil Lock, which are going to compress and distort in a colorful way. You've got Echo Boy, which is a plugin for delays and things like that. Micro Shift, which I use on the background vocals. Then you've got this thing down here called Tremolator. It's at the bottom. Okay, so this is just a tremolo plugin. Used it pretty much on all of the electric guitar tracks because my electric guitar is coming in from a Strymon Iridium pedal. So this is a simulation of a guitar amp. This is not anything that was mic'd up. I'm going to play a little bit of the electric guitar without the tremolator on, and then I'll turn it on. I'm going to turn it on now. Okay. The tremolator speaks for itself. Tremolo plugin, you can set this thing to a specific rhythm within the beats per minute. So it's at an 8th note right now. So it syncs with the tempo you have set on Studio One. That's pretty much the same for all of the electric guitars. On the bass guitar track, doing a little bit of processing. So again, I've got my gain staging because we got the mix tool. Again, didn't have to do a lot. That's like 1 decibel VU meter. I'm using this LA2A plugin, which is a compressor. So again, if you're using Studio One's built-in plugins, you can just grab the compressor plugin from Studio One. Presonus folder, compressor. LA2A is an optical compressor. It's meant to be kind of transparent, but this thing is pretty notorious on bass guitar. It's just going to make sure that the level of the bass guitar is not jumping out at you. I don't want it to poke so much. I just want it to fill in the low end. Then on the EQ, I have this interesting move because I have a noisy bass guitar. So let me just play a little bit on this Let's see, on the bridge here, we got a little bit more activity happening on the bass. I'm going to bypass this EQ plugin with the bass isolated. Let's take a listen, and then I'll engage the plugin. You'll kind of hear why. You can hear that really staticky, high-frequency sizzle. My guitar is just very noisy. So with the bass guitar, I'm rolling off all of this high end to try to treat some of that noisiness. You probably have noisy instruments as well. It's not the best thing you could possibly do. Obviously, if I can fix my bass guitar, if I can find out what's going on electronically with it, I do have suspicion. I live across the street from a power plant, so I've got this little like tick that's making me think, even though I'm across the street from them, I think I've got a lot of electrical issues. I am in a house that's a new construction, so you think that wouldn't be a problem, but it happens on all my electric guitar tracks and all my bass tracks as well. With the bass track, I can just roll off that high end. It'll sound like this. If you're not wearing headphones, you probably couldn't hear any of that at all. But essentially, we're just getting rid of some of the hum that's coming from the electronics as well. Now, one of the last things I want to bring to your attention is this lead vocal track. It has the most processing to it because the lead vocal is also very important. Similar move I did on Pro Q3 that I did with the acoustic guitars. I have a dynamic EQ set to about 240 hertz. Another one set up near the sibilant S region. We recorded Lana on a Rode NT2A, which is a large diaphragm condenser mic. It's a more affordable condenser mic, so it brings with it a little bit of harshness, especially if you're really close to the microphone. It's going to accentuate some of those. So we did use a pop filter. Controversial take, we do have auto-tune loaded on her vocal. Lana doesn't need auto-tune, but it's almost part of the trying to stand up with modern tracks, music that's out there today. If you choose not to use auto-tune, it's totally up to you. This one is being set at retune speed about 31, and the key set to A major, alto, tenor. There's a section in the bridge where we definitely want to do something. We do have Melodyne as well. Melodyne is a little bit more specific. You can go in and just tune 1 or 2 words at a time. But auto-tune not only tunes the vocal, but it brings kind of like that polished sound. There's some sort of tone or overtone that comes with auto-tune as well. So if you're making something for a modern mix, even if it's acoustic singer-songwriter kind of deal, check out auto-tune if you can. This one's set to the key of A major, and let's take a listen.
But my bags have long been packed and rolled away, and that Chattahoochee still runs through my veins.
If I turn auto-tune off, that same phrase.
And that Chattahoochee still runs through my veins.
Very subtle, which is a good sign. If you put auto-tune on your lead vocals track and you don't notice a whole lot, well, hey, sounds great. Here is a gate plugin, which I'm playing around with because one of the things that I'm learning in this room that I've got set up, I'm using a MacBook for my processing, and the MacBook is driving me insane because it's got this fan and it's so loud. It's all over my recorded tracks. I don't have a way right now of separating the MacBook from the recording space that's going to be sustainable in the long run. So at the moment, I'm using this FabFilter Gate Pro G. If you just want to use the Presonus Gate, you can use that as well. But let me try and find some more egregious sections here. I'm going to set this to a loop, and I'm going to turn the gate off and on so that you can hear. Listen for the sound of that laptop, because, man, it is super annoying.
And rolled away. And rolled away. And that.
It kind of sounds like the ocean if you're listening for it. You're probably going to have headphones on to hear any of that stuff. This LA2A is not doing hardly anything. It's at most, we're hitting 3 decibels of compression, but you take a listen for yourself. You'll see the needle responding.
Georgia still is always on my mind. Thought leaving town would start my life.
LA2A is just a compressor plug-in. We have another compressor plugin. This one's set to a de-esser setting. If you're using Studio One Professional, or if you've got their subscription plan, you probably have a de-esser plugin as well. The de-essing specifically is taking out the 2K region to 12K. So this is almost like a high shelf. It's taking out a lot of content, but we're trying to soften that vocal as much as possible. And again, I attribute maybe the laptop and the microphone as well, trying to get rid of some of that harshness, which brings in Soothe. Soothe 2. This is a rather expensive plugin, but is well worth the money. And what it basically does is everything I've been talking about, the harshness, is trying to treat that as much as possible. Started with the vocal preset and then just kind of manipulate, especially this upper one right here. You can kind of take a listen for yourself to hear what it's doing. I'm going to bypass it. We'll take a listen at the bridge and then I'll enable it.
I thought leaving town would start my life, but I'd love to watch the sun dance on that river one last time.
Not sure what all voodoo goes on with the Soothe 2 plugin, but it sure has been great with Lana's vocal as well. And I've got this Pultec EQ doing a little bit of boosting around 60 hertz and then boosting over at 12K and a little bit of attenuating at 5K. 5K is going to be that sibilant area for Lana on her vocal, just kind of giving a little bit of polish. The Pultec EQs tend to add a little sizzle, kind of like a tube would do. Since we recorded on a NT2A, trying to add some vibe to it as well. The only other thing I want to talk about is basically we have a vocal parallel compressed bus happening. So a duplicate of this vocal is being sent to this bus that is specifically having a lot of compression added to it. And what that's doing is it's trying to catch any of the quieter portions of the song. It's going to give some support to her vocal. You can see it right here. It's called Vocal PC, Vocal Parallel Compression. I'm going to go ahead and solo the vocals bus, and you'll be able to hear it on and off. We'll start on this chorus 3. I'll unmute the parallel compression, and then I'll mute it. You can kind of hear what it does.
Time, but my bags have long been packed and rolled away. But my bags have long been packed and rolled away.
Here it is unmuted.
But my bags have long been packed and rolled away.
That's one of the things that you could definitely go without, especially on a mix like this. It's one of those that it worked for us in the past to put Lana through a parallel compressed vocal track. And then it goes from there to the vocals bus, and the music bus. Head to the mix bus, and we're pretty much done. The background vocals, I did a video on this earlier. I've got them panned out left and right at 50%. And those background vocals are being filtered with FabFilter EQ, taking out some lows and highs, doing a little bit of de-essing. And then this effects rack has the micro shift plugin, which is kind of like a chorusing effect as well. The other thing I'll talk about is just the fader positions and values, because when you go through and you take the time to clip gain your tracks to get your gain staging right, your faders actually mean something. So if everything is hitting -18 on the VU meters, then all of a sudden, if I turn this acoustic guitar track down by 3 on the fader, if it says -3, they actually know that it's -3 compared to the other one. You got to kind of set the standard to be the same. Think about this. If I had an acoustic guitar track and this track here was hitting like 0, if it was just clipping like crazy, if this was just, let me do a move right here I'm going to regret, but if I drag this up, let's say you recorded 2 acoustic guitar tracks. Look at this one and look at this one. If you set the faders to 0, well, you would think faders at 0, they must sound exactly the same. They don't sound anything alike. They don't sound anything alike because of how loud this one is been recorded. So when you do gain staging and you make the waveforms of similar size, then when you make a decision to say, I want this one to be at -3 and I want this one to be at 0, it actually means something. It wouldn't matter if I took this track and put it at +12. If this track is clipping at 0, this thing, because it's a lot quieter, wouldn't even make a difference. So make sure you take the time to gain stage. It's one of the important things when it comes to mixing. Effects wise, I just have a plate reverb. Pretty much everything is being sent to the plate reverb. And then I've got this chamber reverb as well. They're not turned up very much because, again, with acoustic tracks, the more things you do that are noticeable, it tends to be a little too noticeable. So anyway, if you're new to recording and mixing, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions about any of this, you can also leave me a comment in the comment section. I'll be happy to try and answer that either through video form. If you haven't heard the song Georgia's Still in My Mind, you can go to my wife's music channel, Lana Green Music, here on YouTube, and check it out as well. I hope you have fun mixing and recording in the future. Hopefully this has been a little bit beneficial to you. Feel free to copy any of the settings that you want, but make sure that you do the best thing for whatever song you happen to be recording or mixing at the time. My name is Chris Green. Thanks so much for watching.